Hello everyone, welcome to week 8 live lesson, and today we're going to be looking at pseudo classes, elements, and document language. So in the class lesson we previously learned the different pseudo, not all but some of them, pseudo elements and pseudo classes. So in this lesson we're going to be diving deep into more into the classes, the pseudo classes and pseudo elements, and look at how to make use of the document language, and also to use other examples other than the ones we've learned in the class lessons. So to start with, pseudo classes and pseudo elements. So most times people find it hard to tell the difference. Some find it hard to tell the difference in the syntax or the meaning of the difference in their meaning. So we're going to look at them individually. Now for pseudo classes are used to target elements based on their states or position in the document. So they are followed by a colon. So I'm going to show how we write syntax in pseudo classes when we start with the examples. So we're going to look at how to use over. When an element is hovered over, the style that is going to display. So that is done we do that using pseudo classes. So pseudo classes target the element itself and not its content or any additional elements. So I'm also going to look at an example to see how this works. Now for pseudo elements on the other hand are used to target a specific part of an element's content or to create a new element that doesn't exist in the HTML. They are unlike the pseudo classes, they use a double colon followed by the element name. Now we're also going to look at example, but to summarize it, we can say that pseudo classes target the element based on their state or position, and pseudo elements target specific parts of an element contents or create new elements. So let's create content that we can use to illustrate this properly. So for the classes, we want to have a header. We want to have a heading. So I'm going to create a H2 heading, and I'll just call this pseudo classes. Now in this heading, we're going to have paragraphs followed below, and I also want to use this paragraph to illustrate the document language. So in the class lesson, we also looked at document language. So I'm going to explain further how this is used, how the document language is used on our web pages. So the document language is a very important attribute that we must use if we have, let's say we have a different language other than the language we are writing our code in, which here we have it as English. So we haven't specified the language in the document. So there are several parts of the HTML document you can specify depending on where you want the reader to, especially if you want it in the body, you can specify it in an element that's going to display maybe the language text or content, or you can specify it in the HTML tag. So if we are going to be designing a page that should be in one language, we can specify the language using the lang attributes and specify which language we are going to be designing this page on. So there are different abbreviations for different language. We have EN for English, and we have FR for French. And we also have ES for ES for Spanish. So you can also research if you have any specific language you might want to be writing or designing your page on. But for this exercise, we're going to be having our languages in our P tags. So for each line of paragraph, each line of text in the paragraph, we are going to specify which language we're going to be writing. So this is a very important process that we should have. We should have this done in our documents if we want to have different language written. So this is very important because we want to always have the language specified, so search engines can be able to effectively or accurately search for our pages. If someone searches for something, let's say when you search on the internet using a search engine like Google or Bing or Yahoo, those search engines try to find the most relevant website for your search. So they do this by looking at the content of the web pages. So if a web page is in English, for example, you search for something in English, the search engine will know that the English web page is more likely to be useful to you. So the search engine will mostly provide web pages that are in English languages. So imagine you're looking for a recipe for spaghetti carbonara. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. So, and then you type the spaghetti carbonara and the receipt. You expect to get a receipt for a recipe for that. Now, in your Google search, assuming you're using Google, Google is going to look through millions of web pages to find the best ones. So if your web page says Italian recipes and the language is set to Italian, Google understands that this page might have a good spaghetti carbonara recipe because it's in the same language as your search query. So that's going to be very effective when it starts providing the search results, and you're going to get your best results because most of the pages now has that their page program in that language would always display first, and that is very effective. Now also for assistive technologies like screen readers, because there are different softwares we use to read screens these days. So let's say for now these tools they help people with disabilities. Let's say for someone who is blind, so they help people with disabilities access the and interact with digital content. For example, like I said, the screen readers. Screen readers are assistive technologies that read aloud the content of the web page for people who are blind or visually impaired. So when a screen reader encounters a web page, it's important for it to know that what language the content is in, so that it can produce or pronounce words correctly and use the appropriate language rules. So let's say there is a website about famous historical figures, and it's available in multiple languages. So if a person speaks Spanish or is visually impaired and the person is using a screen reader, they need the screen reader to know that the content is in Spanish. So this will ensure that the screen reader pronounces the names and the information correctly, making the website accessible to them. So the blind person will be able to have proper understanding if the person understands in Spanish. So by specifying the language of your content in HTML, You are helping these technologies do their jobs better, making your content more accessible and easier to find for people all around the world. So for our exercise here, we're going to be using the lang attributes for the paragraph, where we are going to have a different language. So for our first paragraph, which will be in English, we're going to specify the lang attributes, so which is the language attributes, and we are using English for this. And we're going to write in English and say hello world. Next, we want to have another paragraph. For this, we want to use a different language. Then we use the language attributes, and this would be in French. So we use the value FR for French, and for French we say bonjour. Le monde. So this is also hello world in French. And we can also have another paragraph, and using the language attributes. For this, we could use Spanish, and Spanish for hello world is hola. Okay, so now we have 3 paragraphs, and this paragraph is different language specified in the language attributes, because we have different texts in the different language, relative languages. So this is one way we can specify the language and effectively give the right they make it easy for screen readers and the right search to be produced when they search for relative text in this language. Now, next, we can have a second heading to illustrate our Pseudo Elements. And to have something we can use a paragraph, and we want to try the first line Pseudo Elements, and we're going to see how this is done. We're going to see how this is done. So I will create a text for this, and this first line of this paragraph will be bold. So we're going to use Pseudo Elements to style this line of paragraph, and we can make it larger. So we're going to see how this is done using the Pseudo Elements. Select this. Alright. We can also create another paragraph for the second line, and we can say this
Hello.
Hello. You want to ask a question? Okay. So we have paragraphs that we're going to be using to illustrate pseudo elements, and also we've also created content for the pseudo classes. We also have paragraphs that we're going to use to illustrate pseudo classes. Now, in each paragraph in the pseudo class, we have an attribute for language to specify languages. So this, like I said, helps us to help screen readers and also search engine to be able to effectively, for screen readers to effectively read the text properly. So if a screen reader is to read this paragraph, which is Bonjour le monde, in French, we have to specify the language attributes and the value, which holds the language that we have given in this paragraph. So here we have French for FR, and we have the paragraph written in French, which says hello world. And also we have the third paragraph, which is for Spanish, and we have the text too in Spanish. So just like the English too, the EN stands for English, and we have our text in English. It says hello world. So we have 3 different languages that's saying hello world. So this will enable the screen reader to be able to read the text properly. To people who have issues with sight. So if someone has maybe partial sight issue and they require a screen reader to be able to read the text properly, so the screen reader software or application would be able to read out these texts in the right pronunciations, because it's going to see that we have the language specified in the language it was written as. So it's going to give a proper reading to the person. And then also for search engines, it's going to provide an effective result if the search was if the text we used, what we're searching for, if the text we used, language we used was in any of the language specified in this website, then it's going to effectively look for pages that has been designed in that particular language first before any other page. So it enables search engines to effectively search, give proper results once you have the language in the language the user is searching for. Now we want to apply styles to our classes, to the pseudo class. So we can see how the pseudo class styles are applied, and also to the elements. And then we're also going to have styles for the document language using pseudo classes as well. So I'm going to save this and see how this displays on the web page. Now we have them just normal. So when we apply the styles, we're going to see them displaying differently according to the style we specify. Now let's look at styles in pseudo classes. We're going to apply styles to the okay, so let's add one more element here that we can also apply styles to. So I'm going to put this below, and for this I want to use the button element. Now this is just for illustration, so I'm just going to take out these attributes, since I just want to show you how we can style buttons. So I don't need any of this attributes, just need the button element. Now, to make this more realistic, I'm going to give a text here and say, since I'm going to use the hover pseudo class, let's say over me. Yeah. So let's say this, refresh my page, and we have the button displaying. Now, we want to apply the styles. So let's start with the button for the pseudo classes. So, like I said, the pseudo classes only affect the elements itself. So now the elements button is the targets that we want to apply style to. So we use the elements button. And what do we want to do to the button? Now we want to use the pseudo class to apply a hover effect to this button. So we have the pseudo class is followed with a single colon, and we want to use the hover pseudo class for this to have that hover effect. Now there are different pseudo classes. Now these options here are mixed with pseudo classes and pseudo elements, but we have different pseudo classes like active, checked, default, disabled, and empty. So these pseudo classes they are applied to the elements itself. Whichever pseudo class we select here is going to be take effect on the class we select. It's going to take effect on the button, the elements we are applying the style to. So I'm going to repeat this. So for this button, I want a hover effect. So I'm going to use the hover class, the hover pseudo class. And what do I want it to do? I want a background color. So I want it to have a background color whenever we use our mouse to hover over the button itself. So I want it to be yellow. And then, okay, so, and then when we can also apply other styles, not just color. I want the cursor to be pointer. So this is going to change the display of the mouse when we hover around the button itself. So if I hover around over the button, you see it changes the background color to yellow and changes the display of the cursor to a pointer. So this is one way we can apply styles using the pseudo class. So there are several pseudo classes we can apply. We can also do this with the anchor tag, where you can make sure that whenever a user wants to click on a link, it displays a color to show that it's active. And for that, we use the pseudo class active to make sure that when the user clicks on the link, it shows that it's active with the color we specify. And then we also have for create another one to show, but first we'll go back to that to look at other pseudo classes after that because of time. So let's try and apply the pseudo class style to the lang attributes. So we have a lang pseudo class selector, So unlike the button we have applied the pseudo class selector to, we want to do this now with the lang attributes. So because we have a lang attribute here, we also have a lang pseudo class that we can apply the style to. So I'm going to specify here that in the P elements, which we have the lang attributes, I want to select using the pseudo class the language, and in the language, in the curly brace, I want to specify which language I want to select the styles for. So I want to apply this style to the English. Let's use EN first. So we can do this for the 3 languages. So this will be for English. And for English, I want all English text to have a color, a text color of blue. Then for the other language, like for the other language, we want to use the pseudo class as well, and using the lang pseudo class and specifying the language inside the brace, we want to apply style to, let's say, FR, which is for the French language we have on our paragraph in the page. Now we want this to have its own unique color, so wherever we have the French color, it's going to have its own unique color. So we're going to specify the color. So the text color for French language would be, let's use red. And we can do this as well for the Spanish. So I'm just going to change this to specify that I want this for Spanish. I'm going to save this and let's see if this displays properly. Alright, so I didn't change the color for Spanish, and for Spanish, let's change the color to green. So we have the 3 colors for the 3 different languages. Yes. Now this is possible, or we've been able to do this using the pseudo class selector. So this is one creative way we can apply styles using the pseudo class selector. Alright, now this is for the pseudo classes. So let's look at pseudo elements. Now we already have a content here that we've created to illustrate this. So for the pseudo elements selector only affects the content that we specify. So the pseudo elements is unlike the pseudo class, where the class has its effects directly on the elements, just like we have here, that we want the button elements to have a hover effect, and whenever we hover around the button, it gives us the style that we have specified to have a pointer on as a cursor and a background color of yellow. Now also for the paragraph, it's affected the elements, the P elements. We selected the languages, so we use the language selector in the Studio classes. So we made sure that the different languages has different colors on the web page. So now let's see how we can use the Pseudo Elements to either create content or create styles that affects content around the elements itself. So first we want to use the P elements that we have created in this in the HTML, and this is how we write pseudo elements. So unlike the pseudo class, we use a double colon, then specify the pseudo elements that we want to select. So here we want the first line, so there are several pseudo elements, and you can see them too from this options here provided by my ID. You can see that when you see a double colon, you know that you are using a pseudo element, and the single column is for the pseudo classes. So we have after, we have before, we have first line, we have first letter. So like I said, the pseudo elements affects content or creates content around the elements, and then the pseudo classes has its effect directly on the elements itself. So if we are using this selector, the first letter, it means whatever style we apply to this selector is going to apply to the first letter of the elements we have. So we have a P element. So if we say first letter, it means the first letter, which is okay, first letter is T. So it's going to apply to the T text there. If we say first letter, or if we say first line, so let's use first line, since we've already said this first line of this paragraph we bold and large. So let's use the first line element selector, and we're going to apply styles to the first line. And since we've already said we're going to make sure that this first line paragraph will be bold and larger, so we use styles, we use property, CSS property like font weight. We're going to use the font weight property, and we want it to be bold, and then also for the text size or the font size to be bigger, we can use the font size property and specify the size of the property. I want this to be 1.5 em. So this is another unit we use for text. We've been using px as a measure unit, but there are several units you can have on your web page, and the em is one of them. So I'm going to save this and see how this displays. So you can see that the effect of the first line. So okay, since we have two paragraphs, it's going to affect the two paragraphs. So I'm going to take out this paragraph. Because we've specified that we want it to be applied to all the P elements and on the first line of P elements. So that's why it's going to affect the second paragraph, or that's why it was affecting the second paragraph. But now we have just one paragraph, and you can see that its first line has the effect we have specified on the line of the paragraph. So if the text goes on and on, then you can see that it's only going to apply to the first line that we have specified on the CSS using the element selector. So these are the basic ways we can make use of the pseudo elements and pseudo classes, and also how we can change or specify the language by using the lang attribute. So we can either use it documents like we have here in the paragraph, or we can use it if we are writing the whole document in a particular language. We can use it in the HTML tag and specify the language attributes there with the language we used or true. All right, so is there any question? All right, so if there are no questions, then you can always reach out to me on the WhatsApp group if you have any challenges. I wish you all success in your assignments as well.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.